60 billion messages sent on digital platforms each day, between emails, text messages, notifications, feeds. There's just so much content that's being pushed out into the world. You have to find some way to stand out and grab their attention.
I really wanted to bring Brendan onto the stage because I interviewed Brendan on the Mindvalley podcast a couple of weeks ago, and people were really in awe at the value that he gave out. So Brendan is one of the kindest, most humble men I've ever met. And what's truly unique about him is he also is a frickin' genius. He decided at one point that he wanted to see how he could acquire 1 million fans on Facebook in 30 days from scratch. And he did that. And he wrote a book about it. And then he decided to see, how can I acquire 1 million fans on Instagram from scratch? And he's about to hit that number in 3 weeks. He's currently at around 800,000 plus. But what I love about Brendan is this, just a short little story to preface you in. Yesterday on the bus back from the catamaran, you know, everyone is tired. We've been out in the sun and the waves for so long. And Brendan sat next to me, and for 30 minutes, he just shared tips and advice and what I need to do and how I need to change my strategy. And I was so in awe at how giving and how open-hearted this man was. So please give a big round of applause to Brendan.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Brendan, before we start this 30-minute session, so this is going to be a little bit more than an interview. Me and Brendan planned out a series of concrete questions that are going to add value to you, not just theoretically, but actual what to do next, okay? But Brendan, before we get to the questions, is there anything you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think it's, I'm obviously here to talk about followers, and that's why a lot of people are here, but my background is really as a strategist. I like to figure out how things work and deconstruct it, whether that is generating 1 million followers, whether it's generating $100 million worth of revenue, or reverse engineering the art of the interview for digital platforms, or book launches, or marketing. I'm just fascinated with learning, and I think that sometimes it can be misconstrued of why I generated 1 million followers, and they think, oh, you're just trying to make yourself famous. Honestly, the reason I did it is for everybody here, because I am a firm believer that there's people all over the world, and you and I have talked about that can truly transform it, and a lot of the people are in the audience today. They just don't know how to get their message out there into the world, and that was really a part of the inspiration behind why I did what I did.
Beautiful. So we're going to come to that in a moment. So folks, these are the questions that we're going to be asking Brendan. Why did you decide to get 1 million followers in 30 days? What is the biggest mistake that we all make in growing our social following? Is social media even required to be successful in today's world? We live in a 3-second world. How do we actually stand out? How do we choose what platform, Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, to focus on? What is the best piece of advice for someone here who's starting from zero? If you are new to social media and you're starting from zero, raise your hand. Nothing wrong there. Okay? And what is the best advice for someone who already has a bit of a following and a brand and want to take it to the next level? Raise your hand if you're in this category. Great. So these are some of the topics we are going to be covering in the next 30 minutes or so. But before we do, Brendan, I want to ask you this question. Tell us about the best A-Fest moment you've had over the last 3 days. And you can be explicit. This is a very accepting crowd.
I think last night was kind of a funny experience. So I actually went out to dinner with Katrina and a few friends, and we were at dinner at this Indian restaurant. And as you all know from the introduction, I like tequila. So they did not have tequila on the menu, so we decided to go to the liquor store and then sneak the tequila bottle into the restaurant and proceeded to get pretty drunk from there.
A-Festers. If you know a speaker is coming on stage in the morning the very next day, let's not take them to a liquor store to buy bottles of tequila and then make them do shots at dinner the day before they're making their big A-Fest appearance, but still you look amazing.
Oh, that's why I drink tequila. It's the only stimulant out of the alcohol, so it's like I don't get hangovers from it. That's why I drink it.
Awesome, Brendan. So let's go to the first question. Why 1 million followers in 30 days? What made you decide to take on that crazy goal?
So first off, my background's a little bit different than most people. So I started off in the entertainment industry and working for film studios. And the interesting thing about film studios is that literally, unless you're doing a sequel, you have to create a brand in less than 3 months. And that brand has to not just reach 10,000 people. You have to reach 50, 100 million people, because it's the only way you succeed. It seems like crazy when you think about it. It's like one of the only industries that has chosen to figure out how to build brands in months instead of years. So very early on, my brain was kind of trained to think big, to think as big as possible, because if I just focused on bringing ideas that was going to reach 10,000 or 100,000 people, I would have gotten fired.
Right.
And then that extended when I moved out of the film industry and I started building technology platforms for like Taylor Swift and MTV. It just constantly ingrained that thought in my head is, how do you go as big as possible? And I think that one of the interesting things and approaches that I take with this, and it was interesting because you introduced me to Craig Clemens at the Malibu party, and we were talking, and in that conversation with him, he actually pointed something out to me, is that most of us focus on the concept of the 1,000 true fans, is like, how do we build 1,000 true fans and build a business that way, versus what I recognize that I do is I try and go as wide as possible, be as loud as possible, so people can't ignore you, and then bring that attention back. So what that looks like for me is generating 1 million followers, you get on big podcasts, you get on television, you're speaking on stage, and through that, then you can get your 1,000 true fans, but you can even grow exponentially out that way. And in my career of working with huge brands, corporations, and celebrities, people would ask me, okay, that's great that you can work with a Taylor Swift, but she's at such a high level. Like, what can you do for somebody starting from scratch, or what can you do? It's kind of like a disbelief. You look at somebody at the top, and you're like, well, I can't reach that. I don't even know where to start. So for me, it was like, well, can I do that? Like, can I start with somebody from scratch, somebody starting from zero? And when thinking about, well, who would be the perfect person to do it on, I thought, why not myself? Like, I was at zero. I wasn't on television or film. Yes, I was behind the scenes of working with these people, but I wasn't famous. And it gave me that flexibility to do it. And again, the inspiration was, if I can really figure this out and generate a system for it, then I can share it with everybody.
Right. And what's really remarkable of that is, think about this, right? Brendan was the guy behind the scenes, and he proved that fame could be created through the right tactic and strategy on today's platforms. After he hit 1 million fans in 30 days, and you actually did it in 30 days flat?
I've actually done it in 14 days before. So I worked with a non-for-profit, I did it in 14 days, and I'm
But for your own brand? It was
No, so I did 1 million in 30 days for my brand, and then I had a friend that had a non-for-profit for saving the ocean. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, hey, I really need some help. I'm trying to raise some money for this charity. Can you help? So I was like, sure, but you got to let me do it as quick as I can because I want to see what's possible. And then I ended up doing it in 14 days.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So think about that lesson, right? Imagine we have a not-for-profit dedicated to saving the ocean. Getting 1 million fans in 14 days, that is going to make a massive mark. So Brendan wrote a book. The book is this. It's called 1 Million Followers, How I Built a Massive Social Following in 30 Days. That's the subtitle. Growth Hacks for Your Business, Your Message, and Your Brand from the World's Greatest Minds by Brendan Kane, forward by Prince EA. Check out the book, 1 Million Followers. It's an incredible book. And I think this is something that is going to be a must-read for anyone who is looking at growing their following on Instagram, Facebook, or any other platform. So Brendan, that was the reason why you sought to hit 1 million followers. What has that done for you as a person, this instant fame?
So to me, first off, like in doing it, I knew I could do it beforehand. Like I wasn't like seeing if it was possible. I knew it was possible because I had done so much work with other people, and it literally took me 3 years to develop the system to do it. So it wasn't like just one morning I woke up and I'm like, oh, I'm going to see what can happen. There was a lot of strategic planning and figuring out how it works. And before doing it, I asked myself, why am I doing this? Like, what is the purpose? And for me, and we were talking about this yesterday on the bus, like, I love to teach people. I love to share information. I love to figure things out, distill it down into its simplest form so I can share it with everybody. And that's what my passion was, is like, well, how do I get a literary agent? So I talked to a literary agent, and I said, if I do this, if I get 1 million followers in 30 days, will you sign me and get me a book deal? And he's like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, so I'll do that. And then I realized the steps behind that. I knew that it was going to lead to speaking engagements. I knew it was going to lead to big podcast interviews, television, and things of that nature. So that's really what it's done. I'm on this journey. You know, the book came out in November, and I'm continuing on this journey to share this mission and this information to as many people as possible.
Amazing. So what is the biggest mistake that we in this room might be making when it comes to building our following?
I think the biggest mistake that I see people make, and I'm brought into these situations all the time in big brands and corporations and celebrities, is they waste so much money, hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of dollars, on either growth strategies or content strategies that just don't perform. And I'm of the mindset that how do we quickly test and learn and iterate to figure out what works? And when I see especially people that are just starting out or just trying to scale, they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and they're not really learning. They're posting, and they feel like, oh, I need to post 5 days a week, and I need to post at these times. I need to use these hashtags. But they're not actually seeing what happens, and they're not learning from the process of putting content out there, taking those learnings and applying it to the next piece of content, and the next piece of content, and the next piece of content. So really, to be successful in this space, you've got to have that mindset of just curiosity and figuring out, like, well, why did this piece of content generate 100 likes versus this piece of content generated 10,000? And it's not getting caught up in the vanity metrics of it. It's trying to just understand the psychology of why certain content is resonating with certain people, certain themes, certain formats, certain stories. And it's not a difficult thing to do. Like, if you just kind of, even if you just post something and just first off, set a hypothesis of like, what do I think is going to happen with this piece of content? And then after it's posted, did that hypothesis come true? And if it didn't, why didn't it? And let me try something new for the next time and the next time.
And what you said echoes so much of what Goalcast said, right? Like when they were on stage, they too spoke about the importance of split testing. Now, in our podcast interview, you mentioned that when you were starting out on this Facebook journey to amass 1 million fans, you wouldn't create one piece of content, you would create variations, post them, and see which variation worked.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. First off, I love the Goalcast guys. I mean, I think what they've done is truly remarkable. And for myself and for a lot of us out there, we're not creative geniuses. We don't know how to create the video that can get 100 million views. Like, I'm on that journey now. Like, that's the next thing I'm figuring out, and I've built a team around that. But for me, I had to find a system to really test and learn and figure out, like, how do I actually create content that people want to share, people want to engage with, whether that is generating a following, generate traffic, or leads or sales or whatever that is. So what people don't realize is they look at the advertising platforms out in the world today as just that, an advertising tool, a media buying tool. But specifically when you look at Facebook and Instagram, it's the ultimate market research tool. Like, literally you can control every single element of who your content goes to. And the system that I devised is you can take one piece of content and literally test it 200 or 300 different ways. And the way that looks like, that there's 5 key elements to what I call a variation. So you have the creative itself. So you have a video or an image, and generally I'll try and create multiple versions of that. So if it's a video, I'll try different meme cards or different captions or different 3-second intros. The second element of a variation is the headline. So it's the text on Facebook that goes above the screen. On Instagram, it's below the screen. Then the third is the demographics. Are you sending it to males or females? What is the age group? Is it 18 to 25 or 35 to 50? Then the fourth is, what are they interested in? What type of products and services do they buy? What type of celebrities do they follow? What are some of their behaviors? And then the fifth is the geolocation, like what part of the world they live in, down to the specific zip code. Now, there's a lot of people out there that use these techniques from a media buying perspective. Just to kind of give you an analogy, I got brought into a very prominent tech company by a celebrity that had signed a deal with them that was really struggling. And they're like, okay, well, we had this media buying firm spend $500,000 testing 47 variations of content, and these were the results. And I said, okay, well, let me just do my thing and let me test. So I worked with them, and they gave me a less budget, a $100,000 budget, and I proceeded to test 75,000 variations of content.
Wow.
And through that rapid iteration, I was able to save them $31 million in traffic acquisition costs off that $100,000 buy.
75,000 variations.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But when you look at it, when there's the 5 elements, like they're interchangeable. So you can take one piece of content, change the headline. You can change the interest level.
But how do you test? So let's pick Facebook as a platform. Would you guys prefer to learn Facebook or Instagram? Raise your hand for Facebook. Okay. Instagram? Great. Let's talk about Instagram.
Sure.
How would you test these ideas on an Instagram post?
So for Instagram, there's 2 different ways. So let me just tackle the leads, the traffic, and the sales side, and then I'll dive into the followers. So they created something called a dark post, and it's pretty brilliant. Like any ad that's created is automatically a dark post, and that means that if you push something out, it doesn't go to your main feed. It goes through your account, but it doesn't go to your main timeline. So that allows you to test hundreds or possibly thousands of variations without spamming your followers. And you can even opt out to select, I don't want to push it to my followers, or opt in to say, I only want to test with my followers. So,
and everyone who has an Instagram account has access to dark posts?
Yes,
Okay.
through the advertising platform. And again, like I'm talking about advertising as a market research tool.
Now let's be super specific. Where do we find this advertising platform?
Just Google Facebook advertising platform. So the Facebook advertising platform fuels both Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook Messenger.
Okay, so this allows us for a little bit of money to test a post.
Yes.
We can choose the demographic. We can see which variation wins,
Yep.
and then the winning variation is what you post on your actual Instagram.
Yes. In my case, what I do is this rapid iteration, it's not just finding out what to post, but it's actually dictating short and long-term content strategy. So I worked with one of the most prominent journalists in the United States, Katie Couric, and basically I did so many variations that I could break it down and tell her who to interview, what specific themes and topics to cover, and specific questions to ask. Because we were running so many tests, and we were seeing the trends, and we were seeing the data, and that just completely amplified the growth.
Wow.
By just narrowing in on what people share, what people really want to hear, so that you can exponentially grow outward.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So this is new information to me. I'm new at this stuff as well, as I bet 90% of you in the room are. So dark post, to recap, we want to use the Facebook advertising platform, which allows us to put dark posts on Facebook and Instagram, test our ideas, and there are 5 different things we want to test. The first one, I believe, is the
creative itself. So if it's a video, the opening, the captions, the meme cards, all of that.
And the second one is the
headline
or the caption.
Yeah.
And the third
is the demographics, like
demographic.
And the fourth is the interest, like who are you, like what are they interested in, what are their backgrounds?
Okay.
And then the fifth is the geolocation.
Awesome. Did everyone get that? So that's some really valuable info. If you thought that info helps, please give Brendan a round of applause. I found that so useful. Now, the second thing is, let's go a step higher. Is social media even required to be successful in today's world?
Well, first off, I'll answer that question, and I didn't break down the following for Instagram, so we'll dive into that after, because I want to make sure I get that information to people. But is it required? I would say no, it's not required. I think that's the misconception, and that's one of the frustrations that I have about social media, is because anybody can open up an account, they're a self-proclaimed expert.
Right.
And one of the reasons I decided to work with people as a strategist instead of building an agency is I think that a lot of the agencies and contractors do a disservice to people because they only tell people, like, this is what you should do because that's what they know, versus looking at the broader picture and creating a strategy specific to their needs. And that's kind of what I work with people in the strategy days and strategy sessions that I do. But I mean, there's some people that came to the breakout session last week, and I talked to them afterwards, and they said after the session they decided not to focus on social media because you don't have to. Like, unless you're passionate about it. Like, I have people come to me sometimes and say, well, I hate social media, but I know I have to do it. I was like, then don't do it. Like, if you have no kind of redeeming factor in it that you want to leverage it for something, maybe you don't necessarily like social media, but you see the potential of what it's going to do. If you don't love it, do not do it because you will not be successful in it. And you can hire all the people in the world. Like, I have a big team that works with me now, but I'm very entrenched in it. Like, I love it. I love learning that process. So you can't Band-Aid it by just hiring an agency or a contract to do it for you.
Right.
Because generally that fails because you have to be so involved in that process.
You're absolutely right. And what I respect about Brendan is, when I asked him, so what's the bigger picture for you? Are you looking to start an agency? Are you looking to start a company? He's like, no, I just want to be a thought leader. He genuinely loves what he's doing. He loves his following. He loves the videos he creates. And if that's you, then yes, do it. If you don't enjoy it, you don't have to do it. Mindvalley wasn't really actively looking at social media 18 months ago. We were an 11, 12-year-old company, no investment in social media. We did paid advertising. So if you look at my Instagram following a year ago, I basically used it to share pictures with friends. And that's because I didn't care about it. You do not need to do social media to be successful. But if you enjoy it, if you love that, if it brings you joy, then it can be a powerful pillar for your business. But I think this advice is really legit.
Yeah, and it's not to say
don't do what you dislike doing.
And it's not to say that there's not potential.
Right.
Like I know 3 people personally that have created billion-dollar valuation companies in the past few years. So there is tremendous potential. There's tremendous opportunity to have impact. But I don't want people to feel the pressure to be like, oh God, I'm dreading this and I have to do this, because you don't have
I'm so glad you made that statement. Okay, so now the next question is, we live in a 3-second world. And what this means is that typically people are taking 3 seconds to decide if they're going to continue watching a video on that Facebook feed or on Instagram. How do we stand out in this 3-second modern attention span?
It's truly remarkable, because if you look at the numbers, there's literally 60 billion messages sent on digital platforms each day, between emails, text messages, notifications, feeds. There's just so much content that's being pushed out into the world. You have to find some way to stand out and grab their attention in those first 3 seconds to earn the next 15 seconds, the next 30 seconds, the next 60 seconds. And that's how I design content both online and offline. And that's literally why people are here today, is like the 1 million followers in 30 days was by design. Like, again, like how we got connected through Steven Kotler. He's like, you should meet this guy. He generated 1 million followers in 30 days. We did the interview and we dove deeper, and now I'm here. It's by design to grab people's attention, because you speak to all these people all the time. And that's kind of where I focus on this concept of a hook point, is like, what is really going to make you stand out to grab somebody's attention so that they can come in for a deeper conversation. And we did this exercise yesterday in the breakout session, but the analogy that I love to use for people is, let's say an editor of a magazine is calling you, and they're saying, we're giving you the cover of this magazine, and it's in your specific niche. You're the only person on this magazine, but you need to give us a headline. And that headline has to be less than 1 sentence. And when imagining what that headline is, imagine your core audience or your core customer walking down a busy street, passing a magazine stand, and there's 50 other magazines on that stand. What is that headline that's literally going to make somebody stop, pick it up, buy it, and then read it? Because it's that difficult in today's world. But I'm not saying just create one. Create 5, 10, 15, 20. We use this exercise all the time, and then we test it, going through that testing process.
On dark posts.
Yeah, to learn what it takes to grab somebody's attention. And that process works not just for generating followers, it works for each piece of content. It works for lead generation, for sales, everything we do. And I also am really, really fascinated of the convergence of online and offline. So my career is really built off being an offline storyteller, being able to go into a big boardroom with a celebrity or CEO of a major corporation and hook them in with something that's providing value. So when I generate 1 million followers in 30 days, or I work with certain people to generate a large following, and we were having that conversation about Instagram yesterday, what is the larger picture? Like how, because like so many people are caught up in being an influencer, which is great. Like certain influencers are very successful, but they're not real brands. They're not really doing a lot offline. And I think that there's such a tremendous opportunity to leverage social growth, to leverage a social following, to apply it to an offline story that can really drive brand growth.
Could you give an example? What do you mean by an offline story?
So again, I'm sitting here. This is an offline story. We're communicating through this concept of generating 1 million followers in 30 days. And I generated 1 million followers in 30 days not to really become an influencer, because I knew it would drive attention to get on big podcasts, to get on television, to get in print, so that you can have a much larger conversation. And to me, that's offline. And then every conversation I go into, still in meetings today, that's what people really want to start with, or that's where I start with, but then the conversation goes so much deeper. Like, if I would have started out and saying, oh, my hook point is content testing at scale and optimization in dark posts, nobody would be here. Nobody would care.
Right.
But it's really setting that hook point and to draw people in. And it's not clickbait. Like, you have to have substance. You have to have value to back it up. Because, like, if we had a conversation, I think, before the podcast, if Steven had introduced us and then I just didn't have any, like, detailed information or providing value, the relationship and the conversation wouldn't have gone further. So I'm not talking about tricking people. I'm just talking about working with individuals that really have the power to transform the world. How do we grab their attention so that you can really do the real work with them?
Right. Right. No, that's very powerfully said. One of the things I noticed, for example, about Instagram, because I never really wanted to get on Instagram. It was only less than a year ago, basically 10 months ago, when I started actually taking it seriously. And now I realize how powerful it is. For example, I was recently speaking at Google, and I just shared a picture of that, right? At Google, so honored to be here. This is a dream of mine to be able to train at Google. And from that, I got so many messages from CHROs and heads of HRs from other companies saying, hey, we'd like to bring you in to speak. And I was actually shocked at how effective it was, because it literally took me just a few minutes to make that post. And this is where I'm starting to see the huge value in going from online to offline. Now, you mentioned dark post, and I love the analogy that Brendan just gave of the magazine rack, right? What would stand out on that magazine? And you said, through dark post on the Facebook advertising platform, we can test out different ideas. But what does that cost? Many people here are companies of one or two. What would be the cost to basically test out a particular headline?
That's the beauty of it. There's no minimum spend on this platform. Like literally, you could spend $25 and learn something.
Really?
Yeah, and that's like so many people.
So if we were testing out 10 different variations of an Instagram post, we could do that for 25 bucks?
Yes, you can. I will say that in the beginning, the only thing that you have to think about is you have to set a baseline for yourself.
Okay.
Because you need to understand what the data is telling you. So maybe the first test, you need to spend a little bit more money to kind of just understand like the content and how it's performing. And then like going back to that example of working with a journalist where we tested 75,000 variations, like I got to a point where I can spend less than 10 cents a variation and project out what it was going to do based upon just the data. Not like, just let me say this, I'm not a math genius. I'm horrible at math, so don't feel like you have to be. Like, I'm just looking at numbers and just like making creative assumptions of what's going to happen. And it's honestly, a lot of it is just common sense. It's like, okay, we test 10 images, one image outperforms the rest. You look at what the best performing image did in terms of likes, comments, shares, email registrations, sales, whatever. Now that's your new baseline.
Right.
So then you did 10 more, and you see if that baseline holds.
So I'll give you an example, right? I was talking to a tribe member here, Maria Solodar, who is from Russia, and she's amassed over 1 million fans on her Instagram. And I asked her, what are some of the things that you learned? And she said, well, I learned that brightness matters. Make my pictures brighter. I also learned that close-ups matter. When I'm smaller in a picture, I get less likes than when my face is bigger in a picture. So those two, for example, became her baseline. And then you can build on there and discover what is unique to you. Now, of course, her audience is Russian-speaking women primarily. Might be different depending on the country you're on. But that would be an example of what you're establishing as a baseline that you can build up on.
Yeah.
Would that be correct?
Absolutely. And again, I think the power of this concept of a market research tool is if you think 10 years back, the only way you could do market research is pay some company $50,000 to $100,000 to do it. And we would do that in the movie industry, and they still do it today, which it just baffles me that they do that. But now we each have the power to do that. We're living in a world today that you don't have to guess. You don't have to do things based upon opinion. You can just test and let the data tell you. We were having that conversation last night. You don't have to fight over things. Just go and test and see what is possible.
Now, let's talk about focus. So when we started taking social media seriously, we first focused like a laser on Facebook. Then very rapidly, we realized that Instagram was actually providing better engagement. So we still kept Facebook going, but we hired a team and we made Instagram our primary focus. But then, as we got into corporate sales, we noticed that LinkedIn mattered. So now we have our primary focus as Instagram, secondary focus Facebook, tertiary focus LinkedIn. And this just means the size of the team and the size of like my brain when I'm applying it to one of these platforms. So the point is focus, don't try to do all the platforms at once, but in the context of that question, for the people over here, what would be your advice on how to choose the right platform to focus on between Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn?
So the first place to start is which one you love using. Which one are you passionate about? Which one do you consume content on? Because you're going to have to be on that platform every day and learning. And if you don't love it, again, don't do it. The second element I look at is understanding the consumption behavior of each platform. The consumption behavior is very different across each one. So let's just talk about Facebook and Instagram. Both Facebook and Instagram are short-form content. You're lucky if you can get somebody to watch something for 30 or 45 seconds. Now, they're trying to change that and compete with YouTube, with IGTV and Facebook Watch, but it's going to be a struggle. YouTube, long-form consumption behavior. So if you really want to dive in deep with people, then that's a great platform. Facebook, the benefit is you can drive so much traffic out to then build that longer-term relationship with them. Instagram has the highest engagement rate today with both stories and posts. That is going to be changing as more people and more content get onto the platform. But it's really first defining, like, what are your goals and objectives, which platform are you most passionate about, and then making a strategic decision from there.
Awesome. So as we've gone through all our questions, what would be, and we have our final minute left, what would be your final words of wisdom to the people in this room?
So I think this really is first understanding why you're doing what you're doing. Make sure that you're truly passionate about it. You see the longer-term vision of it, because yes, I did 1 million followers in 30 days, but I still work on it every day. It's hard work. It takes time. You got to be constantly learning and iterating. And that is the most important thing that really should drive that decision. And also, I just wanted to make sure that I quickly recap follower growth for Instagram, because I just want to make sure I'm providing that value. So when we talked about testing on dark posting will help mainly with your short and long-term content strategy and really on the traffic generating side, the lead generation side, the sales side. But with Instagram, because we've had these conversations, because I forget when we started the podcast, but you kept seeing the numbers growing. You're like, how are you doing this? How are you doing this? And the growth principle of Instagram, so Facebook, you share content out, you grow exponentially outwards. So that's where you see a Jay Shetty have so much growth in such a short period of time. Instagram is actually the reverse of it. You put content out onto other channels and you drive it back. But we still use those same testing principles in a different way. So I have a partner that has 3 million followers. We test content and iterate on his channel to his audience. We find the winning variation, and then we syndicate that content out onto 10 other accounts and then drive that traffic back. And that's where we're generating anywhere from 150 to 200,000 followers a month on Instagram.
Amazing, amazing. So that's a very important nuance. On Facebook, you put out the content, people share it, and that's how it grows. Instagram, you don't put the content on your channel alone, because you can't share it too well on Instagram. You're putting it on other people's channels, which means you need partners. So if you are an influencer with, say, 50K followers, you find other influencers with 50K followers, and you agree to cross-promote each other's content. Or you can find large Instagram sites. There are several that have 1 million, 2, 3 million followers, and for a very small fee sometimes, 25 bucks, they can do a quick story post on you and drive you followers. Thank you, Brendan.
No, thanks for having me.
Please give Brendan a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Appreciate it.